This episode's all about November Charlie 81243, Fairchild 24.
I'm Jonathan Martin, Aviation Director, Flight Instructor, and Airframe and Power Plant Mechanic. I have a passion for restoring and flying antique aircraft. Follow along to be part of my aviation journey.
The Fairchild Model 24 is a four-seat, single-engine monoplane light transport aircraft designed by the Fairchild Aviation Corporation in the 1930s. It was adopted by the United States Army Air Corps as a UC-61 and also by the Royal Air Force. The Model 24 was itself a development of a previous Fairchild models that became a successful civil and military utility aircraft. Fairchild aircraft was hit hard by the Great Depression in the early 1930s as airline purchases disappeared. Consequently, the company's attention turned to developing a reliable and rugged small aircraft for personal and business use. The Fairchild 22 became somewhat of a hit and led directly to a new and much improved Model 24, which gained rapid popularity in the early 1930s. So let's have a look around my 1946 Fairchild 24. All right, guys, what's going on? It was a beautiful day. I got to do some flying with my kids. Reagan was up, JJ was up. We flew around the area and just had a phenomenal day. The weather was picture perfect. I'm sitting in the hangar here in front of the Fairchild, and I'm just looking through this photo book. This is actually a photo book that I put together of the restoration process of the Fairchild. Everything from what the airplane looked like when I first got it, all through the different processes of the restoration. This restoration for this airplane took 5 years, a little over 5,000 hours to complete. It was well worth it because this is such an awesome airplane to fly. I fall in love with it every time. But having a book like this is nice because I can look back and remember that the hard work that I put into the restoration process to get where it is now, because it's such an awesome airplane. You pull it out of the hangar, you fly it, and you just enjoy it. But you really forget whenever you do projects like this about the details of really the time and effort that you spend into it. So always put a book together like this that you can put it on the coffee table, put in your aircraft, wherever you want to keep it, just to look back every now and then. So I got a question. Somebody asked me the other day, why a Fairchild 24? Why not a Bonanza? Why not a Cherokee? Why not a Cessna 150? Well, let me answer that this way. I've got OAD, old airplane disease. And what that means is if I am going to spend the time and the effort and the money on restoring an airplane, it's got to meet my criteria. And really what that is number one, it's got to have wood in the airplane. The wings, fuselage, whatever. As long as it's got one in it, I'm happy. Number two, for this one, it had to be a four-seater. And the reason it had to be four-seater is because we had a growing family at the time. My first aircraft restoration was a 1943 Taylorcraft L2M. My wife and I flew it to Oshkosh in 2004. I got Best Elbert out there and a Silver Wrench Award, which was totally awesome. It was a dream come true. But we had a growing family. We have 3 kids now, but we had number one kid, JJ, Alyssa, and now Reagan. But we had a growing family, and I had the need for a larger aircraft. So my wife said to me, "What do you think about those Fairchild airplanes?" And she suggested that because we used to attend, and we still do attend, Reading's World War II weekend. Reading, Pennsylvania, they put on a tremendous World War II reenactment air show, and we would take the L2 there, and there was a beautiful Fairchild that showed up there, and she fell in love with it, obviously, and she suggested, "What do you think about that Fairchild airplane?" Well, let me tell you one thing, especially in aviation. If your wife ever says to you, "What do you think about X, Y airplane," or whatever that airplane may be. In my case, it was a Fairchild. My friends, that is a green light to go shopping on Barnstormers, Trade a Plane, whatever you can do, but find an airplane that your wife suggests. But in this case, Fairchild's, it fit the bill. It had a stick. It had wood in there. It was a four-seater. So I put an ad out on Barnstormers that night, and it wasn't shortly after that I got about 3 phone calls, 3 emails from people saying, "Hey, I've got a Fairchild project. It's been ground looped. One's missing a wing. The fuselage is pretty bent up." However, it was a little bit more work than I wanted in a project, meaning that I didn't want to have to reconstruct. I didn't want to have to build a jig and reconstruct a fuselage. I wanted a project that, needed some work, needed a recover. About 2 days after that, I got a phone call from a guy down in Florida that said, "Hey, I've got a Fairchild, 1946 Fairchild project. It is ready to cover. It's got a 0 time since major overhaul engine with it, and I'm looking to sell." And I said, "Well, it sounds perfect. I'm looking to buy. Let me come check it out." So my dad and I flew down to Florida. We rented a Penske truck, a 26-foot Penske truck. Went and looked at the airplane, ended up buying the airplane, ended up loading it into the truck and driving it home. It definitely was not ready to cover. Yes, it had advertised a 0 time since major engine on it. I'll tell you about that in a minute. But it wasn't until the way home I opened up the logbooks, okay? So, yeah, I know I should have looked through the logbooks before I purchased the airplane, but it was all there. It was a complete project, and it was exactly what I wanted. So I was going through the logbooks on the way home in a hotel, and I didn't realize until then that this airplane that I just bought hadn't flown since 1956, okay? Think about that. This airplane hasn't flown since 1956. I'm the 3rd owner of it. So this airplane was in storage since 1956. It hadn't changed hands very many times. I'm the 3rd owner. Not only that, I bought it in Florida. I live in Pennsylvania. This airplane spent all its life, according to the logbooks, in Pennsylvania. Not only in Pennsylvania, but in State College, PA. Guess what? I'm a Penn State grad. We are. Penn State. This airplane spent all its life in State College, Pennsylvania. It was the first corporate aircraft of HRB Singer, which was an avionics company located in State College, PA, was later bought out by Raytheon. And I didn't figure this out until later on during the conformity inspection. The FAA inspector, actually designated airworthiness rep, he actually knew the airplane, knew the N number of the airplane, knew the aircraft, and not only did he know that, he used to know the pilot that flew it for HRB Singer, who then sent me photos, original photos later. So it is amazing how small the aviation world is, but I digress. Getting back to the airplane, bought the airplane, brought it back in a Penske truck. My dad and I drove a Penske truck all the way home from Florida with an airplane in the back of it. It was a wonderful trip, had a great time, something I will always remember. And But yeah, that was the start of the next 5 years of my life, essentially restoring this thing. And it was a great experience. All new bulkheads, all new stringers. The wings were the wings were in good shape, but I re-glued them, several new ribs, and did a lot of work there. So the photo book has everything in there, all those photos, everything from the restoration from soup to nuts. So when you restore an airplane, make sure you put something like this together so you can always look back, show your kids, show your family members, show school groups, whoever. It's a great thing to have. This was done on like Shutterfly, I think, but it was a good addition. Anyway, November Charlie, 81243, 1946, Fairchild 24. So if you like what you saw, you guys know the deal. Hit that thumbs up button. And if you haven't done so already, hit that subscribe in the bottom right-hand side of your screen. That way, I know that you're watching the videos, and I also know that you're liking what you see, so hopefully